Welcome to New Day Kenya. The number is 0791478990. The hashtag on Twitter, New Day KE. The short SMS code is 40920. As we await for Kidi Mwaga to join the convoy, Ben Kinuthia is here with me, lawyer, commentator, social political development. Ben, thank you. Good morning. I appreciate your time. Joy Medivo is equally a lawyer, commentator on social political development, the executive director of the East Africa Center for Law and Justice. A lot happened over the weekend and, of course, yesterday, which might appear to be having an effect, and the reverberation effect is already felt in the political establishment. Before we get down to business, let's have this soundbite from the county governor of Uasin Gishu County, Jackson Mandago, who yesterday spoke in the county headquarters.
I just want to ask the DCI, Wanakinoti, that there are matters you can joke around with, but there are matters you have to take them with the seriousness it deserves. DCI was not created yesterday. DCI was there 2007, 2008. And therefore, to make allegations that there are people who are involved and are working free, then you are indicting the DCI itself for having failed to actually do their work that time. As the people of this county who made peace and decided they were going to live in peace, what we want to tell anybody with a slight intention of causing violence in this county, that we are not ready, we are not going to accept. We made a decision with our minds and with our hearts, and we made peace with ourselves, and we said, we shall forever live in peace.
That is the county governor of Uasin Gishu, Jackson Mandago, who yesterday spoke following this statement by the DCI boss, George Kinoti. Coming to you first, Ben Kinuthia. What is the immediate practical implication of the DCI move?
Interesting. I think first and foremost, we think, I don't understand. The DCI talked of 118 cases spread across this country. So when the county governor of one county comes and starts to make it look like it's an Uasin Gishu issue, this is where the problem arises. I know there are people who died in Kisumu. There are people who died in Kibra.
Even in Nairobi?
There are people who lost lives in Nairobi. I have not seen the governor of Nairobi come and make such kind of noise. What they are trying to do is to politicize an issue that is not political. Because if you asked me, I keep saying there's a time we had a lady who came to work for us as a house help in my own house, who ordinarily should not have been a house help in the first place. This is a person whose father had 17 acres of land and about 24 cows that they used to milk in Uasin Gishu County, which they lost to the post-election violence. You can imagine coming from a family that is milking 24 cows and having 17 acres of land to your children becoming house helps in the houses of other people. So these are people who have sought justice. Their father got to a point where he had a stroke, and so many other horrible things have happened to such families. And I think what we need to do is to look at it from the right angle. That this is a person by the name Japheth. He went and broke into another person's house by the name Stephen. They killed in that house. They walked on the graves of those people. They are living in the house of Stephen. They are milking the cows that belong to Stephen. Let this not be a political issue. Let this be an issue of one Kenyan who wakes up every morning and sees a house that used to belong to him being occupied by someone else.
And as you point that out, and it's worth appreciating that the governor is a politician, and of course we expect in the coming days the further politicization of this matter. But the question many Kenyans are asking, which is a universal one and has a mosaic outlook, is the timing. 13 years later, how did the DCI come to the conclusion yesterday that it has to do what it announced yesterday?
Again, I go back to the same thing. Has the person in Kibra gotten justice? In law, there is no limitation of time for criminal matters. If it's a criminal matter, I mean, you saw the other time people walked to court and they filed a case against the British government for the atrocities
That
they
was the
committed.
Mau Mau, struggle for independence.
And they got compensated. So can you say the timing was wrong for them to ask for their compensation right now? No, it's happening the world over. I think what needs to do, and what we need to do as a country, is every time let us stop politicizing everything. If I am the governor of a county where 1 or 2 people were responsible for the killing of other people, let me not stand in the way of those people who lost property and lives and limb. Let me not stand in their way of getting justice. I think what I need to do is to say, as the county governor of Uasin Gishu, not everybody in Uasin Gishu is guilty of the post-election violence cases. There are a few individuals, maybe they are 30, 40, 50, and we can help you apprehend them. And if they are actually literally occupying other people's houses, we go on. And let that happen in Nairobi, Kisumu, and every other place. So that we as a nation, because what is happening, I have had women cry and people say that there is no government in Kenya. And why they are saying that is, I lost my house, and I see someone occupying my house 13 years later. And you keep telling me there's a government in place. You keep telling me there's justice.
And that is the deficiency in trust that many Kenyans have, even when it comes to the management of the COVID-19 pandemic. And we will have to go to the deeper essence of the expansive nature this will have, especially on the political landscape. Joy Midiva, good morning again.
Good morning.
And the DCA has the constitutional mandate to do what it announced yesterday, what its boss, George Kinoti, did say yesterday, that it has to get to the bottom of the matter. But there are some who question the timing of what has happened in 2007-8 when the country was engulfed by the ugly spectre of the 2007-8 post-election skirmishes. What do you think might have informed the move by Kinoti and company to unearth what transpired 13 years ago?
There's aspects of this conversation where I agree with what Kinoti is saying, and then there's aspects where I actually disagree. If you look at how the newspapers have reported it this morning, they're talking about the Canberra Massacre being reopened. They're not talking about any other post-election violence. They're actually very specific about the Canberra Massacre. This happened in Eldoret. And of all the places where there was post-election violence that was community-based, Uasin Gishu was the hardest hit. And there has had to be a lot of work done through the years, including the initial handshake between President Kenyatta and William Ruto, to say, you know what, we fought the hardest during 2007, 2008. In coming together, we are trying to bury that hatchet once and for all. And therefore, with that backdrop, therefore, to your question, then the timing becomes an issue. I agree, there is no statute of limitation on when a crime can be prosecuted. If we find evidence after 30 years of the crime, we'll go after you hammer and tongs. What I disagree with is the approach and the style in which it was done. Having a public spectacle with tents and decor and telling people, come and sit in tents and tell us, what stopped the DCI from carrying out these investigations? And the only thing that would let us know that this is what they're doing is when we start seeing people being arraigned in court, being charged with these crimes. Because as it is, my concern now is not even about the politics or anything of it. I'm putting myself in the shoes of those people who have lived the nightmare of the post-election violence, and now you tell me, come, I'll give you justice, and then we reopen these wounds, and we get to the end of the day, and you tell me, oh, you know, there wasn't enough evidence to go to court. So why did you make me travel all this way, recount that thing all over again? It's one of those things I'm wishing that a little bit of sensitivity to the lives of the people who are affected was applied. But that said, there is no perfect time in prosecuting a crime. When you have the evidence is when you deal with it. What I saw yesterday was DCI still trying to get evidence. Then that was the wrong time to come out and tell people, this is what we are reopening. Because you can imagine if I'm a perpetrator, and for example, I had thought to myself that this thing has quietened down, then I see you are reopening this. Can you imagine the tension that is going to be in the neighbors once again? So it's one of those things where I wish some stealth and some you know, some undercoverness would have happened, so that by the time we are talking about it, it is Joy standing in the dock because they burnt Kinuthia's house. It is not a matter of, Kinuthia, come and tell me how your house was burnt, then we see if we can find out where Joy is.
More or less, and from an experience perspective, we're speaking about substantial evidence, which in this case will be the key underpinning factor going forward. Because
it's criminal matters, the standard is beyond reasonable doubt.
Do you think that might have informed the DC? And Kinoti was very specific. He said that the criminal justice system is all united on one front for this matter. Do you think that might have informed the position of Kinoti yesterday and the DCI move?
And that is a good thing, because if they're all on the same page, then they will be looking for what is relevant to secure convictions. And now, if that is the case, I hope that before the Ramzatas yesterday, that there's some critical information that had been secured, some suspects had been secured, because this is when people will destroy evidence, they'll scatter, they'll leave the jurisdiction. I mean, if you make a show of it too early, you actually end up defeating that which you're trying to achieve. Okay. That's the only place I think I would question what happened yesterday. But in terms of seeking justice for those who lost their property and their livelihoods, I'm all for it, because they're Kenyans too, and they lived through a horrendous time. Okay, and we'll come to the aspect about the criminal justice system and the judiciary specifically on this matter, because they have to determine this process. Charles, before I go to Ben, give me page 1 of the Daily Nation. And this is what the paper highlighted this Tuesday morning. Is he the hunted man? The Deputy President William Ruto, in February, during an interview with one of the sister stations in the country, said that there are people, cabal of network to be specific is what he said, who are very much decided in the reawakening, what is a revisiting of the 2007-8 post-election skirmishes cases that he says is meant to put hurdle on its way to the presidency in 2022. I'll reframe that question, Ben, and to you. Is he the prey the predator is seeking in this case?
Let's understand each other. I think sometimes it's hard to support and campaign for some candidates in as much as anyone would want to. Reason being, when Kenya was trying to get rid of the old currency notes, I saw supporters of DP William Ruto, including Kipchumba Murkomen, coming out live on national TV and saying that this is targeting the DP. When we were trying to fight corruption in Kengen and Kenya Power and many other places, they came out and said they are trying to fight the DP and they are trying to finish 2022 succession politics. Then there was a time when the nation needed to get rid of Aror and Kimwarel Dam and so many other corruption cases. Again, his people came and said they are targeting the DP. The question then becomes, shouldn't we endeavor to become the kind of leaders who, whenever a question is raised on integrity, we don't have to keep turning our heads around and backwards? I have not seen Kalonzo worried that the 1,000 shillings note is being gotten rid of. I have not seen Mudavadi worried that there's damn money that's been stolen, and they are not saying, there are so many people in the 2022 succession race. Why is he the only one that every time the nation has to do something that is important for this nation, then his name has to appear? Even when you mention KMC and it's been given to a military guy, then the name Ruto comes. When you mention anything in this country, 2022 comes, and the only person being targeted is William Samoei Ruto. So the day we are going to decide we are going to do all our roads before 2022, they are also going to say that he's being targeted because the roads are being done. I think we need to get to the point where we choose leaders who have integrity. Leaders who do not have to keep looking back at where they've stepped, and every time something happens, their name is in the mix. Okay. If right now you want to even build a hospital, you will hear they're targeting William Ruto. Or if hospital money has been stolen somewhere, you will hear their target. Kwani this guy has stolen everything.
But Ben, as you mentioned that, and the highlight of the enumeration that you have made in terms of the list that you have provided, in the paper also as expanded by the Daily Nation, that is the story highlighted on page 1, the DP in February said that the intelligence chief has reported to him that there are some people who are working on a plan, scheming on a plan, engineering a plan to renew the cases of 2007-8. He seems to have a point in this case, isn't he?
He does have a point. Isn't the DP camp also scheming plans against Raila? Aren't they also scheming plans against Uhuru? You think the DP camp is seated and sleeping and waiting to become president in 2022? This is politics.
But the magnitude of the matter is different. Is politics. They might politically plan against
the magnitude depends on your history and your background.
Odinga, but here is a case that...
Let's face it.
Here is a case, Ben, to be factual, that we as a country went to wash our dirty dishes in international kitchen. And Parliament, for that matter, had failed to establish, in the aftermath of the post-election violence, a local tribunal to charge the perpetrators of the post-election violence, which killed more than 1,200
One of the people who sang, "Don't be vague, say Hague," was William Ruto himself.
And Mother Karua's camp.
Yes, so if you wake up one morning and wish upon yourself that you be tried in Hague. And you go around the country saying, don't be vague, say Hague. And then Hague comes to you. You cannot go and start telling people, we went to wash our dirty linen somewhere, we did this, it should not have gone to the Hague. If it were not pronouncements from his own mouth, going around the country, in fact, he was like one of the persons who really sang that song, don't be vague, say Hague, kasema twende Hague, twende Hague, and they went to the Hague. So if you wish upon yourself something, don't come and cry to us and tell us that that thing was unfortunate for you. And always know that for everything you wish upon yourself, it comes with repercussions. Like right now, the Hague court is not like our court. Now they recalled a lawyer who was involved in that process, and he's there. And what has he done? No, look at the criminal procedure.
The lawyer went against a court order.
Yes,
that was that stopped his extradition.
Look at the criminal procedure.
So there are some more connecting the dots.
He's very clever. Okay. He's very clever. He goes there and he denies the charges. What happens when they deny charges? The case now has to go back and look for evidence. You know what that does? It opens the whole case. Because if he had gone and said, I'm guilty, then he probably had faced the sentence on his own. So yes, it's well crafted. But at the same time, let's ask ourselves, out of the 47 million Kenyans, aren't there people who have a track record of integrity, who are not mentioned in every other scandal that has happened in this country, that we can entrust with the leadership of Kenya? Because what we are doing is we are taking someone who has been proven to have this horrible track record and saying this is the person we want to entrust with the presidency of Kenya. Whereas there are very many good Kenyans who have very good records in leadership positions and some not in leadership positions, but we are not opting for them. And then we cry in 2023.
You, Joy and I do agree that we need leaders of integrity to lead this country, and that is what in any given democratic jurisdiction many in that particular dispensation hope for. Joy, before I come to you, let me get this soundbite from the DCI boss, George Kinoti, who yesterday spoke at the DCI headquarters along Kiambu Road, and this is what he had to say.
Hata kama walifanya wakati hiyo, na wengine tunawajua wako kwa starehe kule, walifaulu kwa mashamba ya watu, mali ya watu walichukua, na wengine hata wanapitia juu ya kaburi ya wale waliua. Hiyo tukawaambia leo, msiwe na wasiwasi yoyote. Tafadhali, inaweza kuwa ilifanyika, mtusamee. Tunawaambia sio tena. Andikisha, tuambie ukweli, na sisi tutafuata ukweli ilivyo. Kama kweli ulifanya kitu ya unyama ya mwenzako, na vile wengi hapa wamesimulia, tuko na watu hata tukisema maneno ya Mwenyezi Mungu, mnakumbuka what happened kwa ile kanisa yetu ilikuwa inaitwa Kiambaa KAG.
And though you have mentioned he cherry picks on the Kiambaa aspect, but my question is that he has clearly stated, and in blunt he said that tunawajua hawa watu. Is it self-indictment of doing what he ought to have done some time back and bringing those perpetrators to book?
No, Kinoti was not the DCI then, so you have to cut him some slack. This is when he is in charge. But there are the dots that are begging to be connected. That this advocate takes himself to the Hague. He goes and he says, by the way, you know what, the charges I'm facing is what? Obstructing justice by bribing witnesses. Then the next thing we see is this public show of collecting evidence afresh. It's one of those things that, I mean, you have to have a level of deniability, I guess, when you don't want to look like it's orchestrated. But in this case, even plausible deniability cannot be a thing. It is obviously some sort of thing that's being put together. So when they say, is the DP a hunted man? Maybe he is. But I do agree on the score that if every time if there's a hunt, you end up being the prey, then maybe there is a problem. One of the things that baffles me in this country is how politicians just, you know, they play games with people's lives. And they're happy to do it regardless of what the end game is. And that's why I said earlier, on my score on this particular instance, my thoughts are with those people whose lives are being turned upside down yet again. And I hope to God that what DCI is talking about is going to happen, because if we interrupted their lives for the sake of politics, it would be most unfortunate. However, the one thing that I think as Kenyans we need to discuss, this is coming in the backdrop of what's happening with BBI. And part of the reason why we came up with BBI is because we do not want to go back to where we were in 2007,
yes.
2008. And so in having a discussion on how did we get to 2007, 2008, and then this becomes a backdrop against which we are talking about collecting the BBI signatures and everything, then I think that the ground is ripe for some honest conversation. And that is an opportunity, I think, as Kenyans, we need to exploit, where we say, you know what, how did we end up here? What we have in the BBI process, is it enough to make sure that we don't end up here again? What we are being proposed to for now, the bill, they say the bill is ready, so maybe tomorrow the bill will be available for Kenyans.
Will be launched.
Forget about that. We want to see also what's contained in the bill. Maybe what is contained in the bill actually has got something that will help us to never go back to where we went in 2007, 2008. Is this also an opportunity for the rest of the names in Bahasha ya Wakampo to be reopened? Because remember, the 6 who stood trial were on the backdrop of some 40-some names. Is this the time then we need to know how many more are in there? What came out of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that was being headed by Marehemu Kiplagat? Is this a time then we need to... Because this conversation, if we do not have it thoroughly once and for all, what we've been doing with BBI will be a waste. What we have gone through as a nation will be a waste. So it is also high time for us to also prioritize and say, you know what, there's some honest conversations that need to be had. But over and above that, we did form a task force to try and find out what happened in 2007, 2008. And we decided at that time, well, for the sake of peace, we just let it slide. And I agree, now that the statute of limitation on crimes does not exist, maybe it is time to reopen that book. It would be excellent if some of the consequences of what has just happened would be that restitution, because it's not enough to just be told, you know what, this was an unfortunate chapter and we closed it. Even the Gashasha system in Rwanda had that element of, even if I can't bring your mother back, can I at least apologize for what I did and my role in turning your life upside down? So I hope Kenyans are ready to go the full hog so that we actually reap the greatest benefit from this particular situation.
Okay, and you have mentioned rightly, because that was on my mind, the Genocide Tribunal also operational in Arusha, Tanzania, that is trying suspects of the 1994 genocide that killed more than 800,000 people. Ben, to you, and what does this then whole scenario portend for the BBI process? That the president and the former prime minister, the two principals more or less, want stable, politically stable country post-2022. So what does it portend in this case for the entire initiative that they are driving?
I think the BBI process, from where I sit, is unstoppable. And I don't see anything that will come in the way of that BBI process. Because even those who are talking about it are trying to play a game of safety, like it has to be negotiated, it has to be amended here and there. They're not outrightly coming and saying, no, look at Article 255, 256, 257 of the Kenyan Constitution that provides for how the Constitution is going to be amended. If it's going to go through the popular initiative method of collecting the signatures, can these people get signatures? 2-3 million, they can get in a day.
Yes, they can.
I keep saying we voted, and Uhuru at some point one time got 8 million votes in an election that was absconded by ODM. They got 8 million votes, and that was like, so basically these people will get the signatures they want. What does the law say? They take them to IEBC. Nothing will stop them from taking them to IEBC,
because that is the procedure.
Yeah, including these people who are saying, let's negotiate. Once they get to IEBC, what's the next procedure?
The counties.
The counties. These people control the counties. They can be able to get at least 30, 35, 40 counties if they want. Because there's money allocated for BBI. I mean, you know MPs how much it would go for. I mean, to pass a sugar report, you just need 10,000 and a toilet. So you mean they're there, yeah. So you can imagine for MCAs, it's probably even going to be worse.
So you mean they can influence the process?
No, they can't. They will. When and if they do, and if that thing has gone through the counties, what's the next most obvious thing?
Parliament, of course.
Parliament. Now, they are controlling Parliament. From whichever angle you look at it, I don't think that the Tanga wing will be able to garner more votes. So in other words, it's as
Parliament. Good as done. It's a
after Parliament, then the bill is ready, and there will be a referendum. It is an exercise in futility trying to fight this process right now. I think there was an opportunity, there was a window during which Kenyans would have done something about BBI and contributed to it. But at this point in time, we are talking of the people who have what it takes to push this thing to the end, and they are controlling your resources and mine to push this thing to the end. And that's how you need to look at it. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it is.
Okay, but so in other words, it doesn't pose any threat to the BBI drive and the replaying of the reggae agenda, basically.
You see, to start with, if you ask me, BBI started as an all-inclusive process. We had two nations living in one country. If you remember the time of resist and people changing SIM cards and everything to the point that the handshake came. Now, those who are out of BBI have not, and I keep saying, have not been relegated out of government or out of the process. They have actually opted to throw themselves out of the process and be on the other side of things. Because I don't see an opportunity where William Ruto and his team have been told, can you come and be included in the process? And the process, they have said no. Every time, including when they said that they are going to go for the BBI meetings, you remember Mombasa, Meru, and they were given a chance. Only that instead of raising the content of their argument, people like Kipchumba Murkomen have a way of raising the volume of their argument, which doesn't change things. But they have been given a chance.
But also you have to figure in, for factual purposes and not misinterpreting facts, that the Member of Parliament, Gatundu South, was heckled out of the Kitui BBI rally.
Now,
which was an unfortunate part. I mean, the governor is saying that
these things they are inevitable. These things are inevitable. But even the person being heckled out, the way he carries himself and the way he carried himself even on that day,
but he still reserves the right.
Look at William Samoei Ruto. He did come to Bomas of Kenya. In as much as some people did heckle him, they gave him a chance and they listened to him.
Okay.
He's the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. I think the way you carry yourself, look at a gentleman like Musalia Mudavadi. I don't hold brief for him, but I admire him. I admire how he carries himself and how he behaves. And Musalia Mudavadi would fit in any camp any day, because when he speaks well of this country. And these are the kind of leaders we see. We need people who, when they speak, they speak well for the country.
Okay, now coming to you, Joy, as we proceed with the discussion, because one element that we can't do away with, because it does open another flip end of this discussion, is the report by the then UN Special Rapporteur on extrajudicial killings and arbitrary detention, that is Professor Philip Alston, who said, and I quote him, that most troubling is the existence of police death squads operating on the orders of senior police officials charged with eliminating suspected leaders and members of criminal organizations. That was largely the report after the post-election violence. But 1 out of 3 of the 1,300 and more than 300 deaths of Kenyans in the aftermath of the election that was disputed was committed by the Kenya police. So we still have a conversation, isn't it, on how we need to restructure our police system in the country.
And this comes in the backdrop of what happened in the last few weeks when we've been talking about professionalism in the service and how the BBI process is proposing to restructure the police service so that they can increase some level of accountability, I guess, by forming the council. It's one of those discussions that we must have in a nuanced manner. Even when we're talking post-election violence, the number of individuals who suffered their death and their injury, not just in 2007, 2008, but even in 2013, Baby Penda was not killed by...
2017.
In 2017, Baby Penda wasn't killed by Kikuyu neighbors. It was in the hands of a police officer that she met her injuries, which subsequently she succumbed to. So it's one of those discussions that must be had, not just in the human rights context, but also in the relationship between the members of the public and the security agencies. In this country, the police was like an inheritance from the colonial era, where they were used to force and maintain order in the society. And that heavy hand was used with the complicit authority from the higher ups to quell and to force people to behave in a certain manner. Part of that is still found in our police force today, and that is part of the problem that we have. We tried in the 2010 Constitution to change the name from a police force to a police service. But we've been struggling to experience the police as a service, and we are still experiencing the police as a force. What Professor Alston actually is talking about is not unique to Kenya. Look at Uganda in the last week or so.
Friday last week.
They've had the same upheaval with the same heavy hand from the police.
He used grenades.
Yes, to try and repress dissent. So I think it talks to the level of also our maturity as a democracy, that we still don't find words to be enough. We don't trust the ballot to solve the problem of who is going to lead us and who's not going to lead us. We do not understand the role of checks and balances.
Okay.
When somebody has got, for example, authority to wield arms and to look after the populace, how do you relate to the populace in terms of operating with them? This issue you've seen even in the United States being brought forth with the Black Lives Matter movement, where the police hand on the populace is so heavy that the caption, "I can't breathe," became the rallying call. So in my opinion, especially with what we're experiencing with BBI and with where we are headed with the elections coming in 2 years' time, if we do not solve the conundrum with the police, we might end up in a situation where you don't have post-election violence with the people, but you might have a situation where if the police are not correctly situated, you have a problem with the police versus the citizens.
Before you come in, let me just follow up with this question, because it's important. She mentions the critical independence of the police service post-2010. But the Building Bridges initiative does propose the formation of the police council to be chaired by the CS. In this case, Dr. Matiang'i will be chairing that. Will it not erode the gains made post-2010, now that we struggle to even bring more reforms to professionalize the police service and create more cooperation between the police and the community for community policing?
The rationale for introducing the council was that once we passed the 2010 constitution, we put up IPOA to look at, even though there's an internal mechanism within the police service to investigate excesses by police, we put in IPOA to check the same excesses. Even though there is a system within the police force to sort of talk about staff matters and issues for the police force, we put in the commission led by then Kavuludi to look at the same issues about promotions, transfers, and things like that. And the feedback from the police has been that you can be in charge of a station and you deploy an officer somewhere. And because he doesn't want to go where you've transferred him to, he appeals to the commission and they write back to the officer commanding station and tell him, you know what, you can't deploy that guy there, he needs to stay where he is. And it has brought some level of indiscipline, for lack of a better word, within the police service. And therefore, to write that indiscipline, therefore, there is the need to migrate it into a police council where you have the civilians, yes, but you also have the police in charge, the Inspector General and the others. He currently sits on the commission, but for some reason he doesn't feel it's the right space. For now, between the civilians and the disciplined forces, the file and rank from the IG to his deputies, then now together they can be making those decisions to try and bring order back in the police service. And that's the rationale for putting in a police council. Does it erode our gains? It's one of those things I think we have to try the shoe on for size to see if it works. Because when we put in the commission, we did not envisage a situation where the junior officers will be finding a way to wriggle out of their in-charge commands. So maybe it's one of those things where we will try it for some time and see maybe it doesn't work. We go back to the commission, or maybe we have a hybrid of the commission. But for now, the proposal is to do that, to just try and bring back control of the higher up officers to the younger, to the lower ranked officers.
And create a form of sanity within the service. Yes. And also, it also empowers the poor now. It's more or less now more empowered under the proposals in the BBI.
Yes.
Which is a sigh of relief, especially for cases of extrajudicial killings that are hanging up in courts of law across the country. Yes, Ben, you had a point.
Good. I think I agree with her to a great extent, with a few limitations here and there. One is that, like, when you look at 2007 post-election violence, a third of those people who died from the police bullet. That I agree. But also, what fraction of these who died from the police bullet actually, because unfortunately, whether or not you have extrajudicial killings, I think, even being a lawyer, I would say some people just deserve to die.
Really?
There are clips.
Oh, there's no life there.
No, I'll tell you. There were clips.
That is an unfortunate statement, Ben.
No, I'm not going to withdraw it because I need to qualify it. I need to qualify it.
That's your personal opinion.
Yes, it's my personal opinion.
But personally, and I'm sure Joy does, I
do not associate with those sentiments.
Having been raised in a church environment,
and I wish I can give you that clip.
Sanctity in life. The Bible, I subscribe to, says that killing one soul is equivalent to harassing the entire human race. So it's your opinion, yes, you reserve the right to say that, and I have to defend that right for you to say, as Voltaire says, following the French Revolution, that has set up secular fronts in modern day. but that is not the opinion of Ebru Television.
There's
and New Day.
Yes, that's mine. Yeah. There was a clip, and I wish I could share, where there were 5 men with pangas surrounding one person and hacking that person to death. And 2 policemen appeared with their guns. What were they supposed to do other than shoot the 5? You can't arrest them.
Can't you neutralize them? You have guns, they have machetes.
This one thing you don't understand.
Just logical.
This is what happens.
I mean, if you're a police officer, you approach
them
with a machete.
You want to neutralize them.
I mean, you have enough firepower to neutralize my threat.
Oftentimes, that's what you imagine. But every time you see every unique situation on the ground, there are times when the police have had excess force on civilians. And there are times when police have had no choice but to shoot. And I can tell you for sure, there are instances when the police appear and the only reasonable thing to do at that point in time to save another life is to remove some of these hooligans from the picture. And this is why I'm saying, in as much as we want to criminalize the police and try to put them in a particular situation, at some point, it's going to become difficult for them to work. They might even choose never to go to work anyway. Because you're sending him to a place and you're giving him a gun. Oftentimes outnumbered, outwitted because they don't even know that terrain very well. So many things are there against the odds. The only thing that this guy has, over and above those people, is that he has a gun, and and even some of them had guns. Mind you, if you ever have a chance to have privy intelligence information about some of the things that happen. For example, during the swearing in of Raila Amolo Odinga, why did the police withdraw? Because there are people who had come in, and those people had guns, and they were part of the Uhuru Park noise that was going on. If those people had drawn guns and shot at any child or any disabled person there, person on a wheelchair, it would have been said, but because the police were there, and the police were carrying guns, it's the police who killed that person with a disability. It's the police who shot that young child.
Okay,
and that is why, wait, and that is why, I'm telling you the truth, verify. And that's why the police had to, and mind you, the rally went on very well.
Okay,
so this is what we need to understand.
This is a national TV, Ben. Okay, let me just pause you. This is a national TV, and we cannot independently verify the statement you have echoed of people who had possessed guns during the swearing in ceremony of the ODM party leader Raila Odinga on the 30th of January 2018.
And that's why sometimes when forensics are done on some of the weapons that caused death, they usually say it's not coming from one of the G3 rifles they have, but obviously the police had the monopoly of weapons. So then you have to think of which weapon specifically.
Okay, the assumption is, Ben, you are creating.
No. What I'm saying is,
what you're more or less echoing is that we at times unnecessarily blame or blame on the police.
Yes.
But they have their fair share of the problem, isn't it?
To a great extent, and that's why I started by saying, to a very great extent, the police have made their mistakes. But there are times when we need to look at this thing and see that the civilians themselves also make very huge mistakes.
Okay, we do have problems on both ends. We have criminal gangs on the rise, and we have police cases that police who have committed extrajudicial cases that IPO is currently handling, and some are ended up in courts of law, and they have been successfully deterred and determined by established courts of law in the country. So we have to agree on both ends. Nonetheless, though, you sounded like Donald Trump in terms of law and order. You criminalize the police all the time. In fact, our police is like... It's not criminalization. That's why we are here, because they provide the security that we need, and that is
sometimes
appreciation.
I have to stand
but
in the gap for them.
Where it ought to be faulting them, we have to do that. Yes. We're in a democracy. We only want a better service from the Kenya Police Service. We have brothers, sisters who serve in the military, police, and the intelligence, and are very good people who are serving this country to some great extent. And if we may now turn our attention to the other important development that is in regard to the... No, hold on. Let me finish up with this, because it's very important. I never wanted us to conclude this discussion without mentioning this. And Joy, from the development of the country's political progress going forward to the next electoral cycle in 2022, we had in 2017 the involvement of Cambridge Analytica that created in the build-up to the election an apocalyptic scene of what a Raila presidency looks like. And the National Cohesion Integration Commission, when contacted, said that is a gray area and we need further interrogation. But we know how Cambridge Analytica not only played a dominant role in Kenya's politics, but also in the United States of America in Donald Trump's election in 2016 and also Brexit in the UK, and how they have managed to perhaps manipulate the political processes. So how do you think, besides the Kinoti looking back to the cases in 2007-8, that is likely going to be shaping the political dynamics in the country alongside well-connected, digitized Kenyans who have information on the fingertips, and how will this shape the electoral outlook in 2022?
I think the issue of Cambridge Analytica is not just one that has been prosecuted in the shores of this country. Like you said, Cambridge Analytica's work is across the globe, basically. But it underpins where we are right now as a society, where information is everything. In this country, we've been having a discussion about, for example, data management. When we are talking about migrating our information to Huduma number, that's data management. When you're talking about Otimofo, for example, with our last elections, that is data management. So we have to come to a place where we find out who has our information and how much do they know about us, because it's what they know about you that they use to craft messages that now feed back, either feed into some bigotry or divests you of a certain opinion and gives you another opinion. This is what we're also seeing now with all the narratives that are playing around. So, for example, when we are sitting here on air and we are airing our opinions, there is a certain communication we are giving your viewers that helps shape their worldview. And so we have sort of taken the work of Cambridge Analytica and de-escalated it into our day-to-day lives. But that said, it becomes dangerous because what it does, it forms people into movements that become difficult to manage.
Okay.
That is what helped Trump ride into power in his last election. But in this election that he's currently wrapping up with Joe Biden, the same has also worked against him. Because the same way he was able to galvanize a certain constituency that was deemed to be underrepresented and galvanize them towards him, the same way the black community has been able to galvanize against him. So when the CI is talking, when the National Cohesion Commission is talking about it being a gray area, I think it's one of the laws that needs to be put in place. And I think in the BBI process, there is provision to make amendments in the Constitution as well as also in statutes regarding how we handle our data. We now have a data commissioner, Ms. Kasait, who was recently sworn in. And even with where we are headed in terms of the digital age, as Kenyans, I think, like you correctly said, the days of our grandmother waiting for the radio to give the news are over. Now people find the news for themselves. And they don't just rely on the hard copy newspaper or what you are doing on air. They'll find it online. They'll find it from friends. WhatsApp has now become a mode of communication. And it affects electoral outcomes because remember, like our neighbors, Tanzania, they just had an election. And in the 2-3 days when they were busy counting the votes, there was a blackout of social media so that people are not able to communicate election results and other things that could have disrupted the peace of the country. So it is a reality that not only must we be alive to, the laws cannot play catch up. The laws must anticipate where we are headed and try and legislate before. Because if we are catching up, by the time the law catches up, the technology will have moved 2 more steps ahead.
And which again will prove to be a hard task to undertake by the government. And thank you so much, Ben. And Joy, after the break, we will be talking about the reggae that is set to be replayed tomorrow when the President and the ODM party leader, Raila Odinga, will be presiding over the signature collection process. Good afternoon. Welcome back to the broadcast. We'll be getting the Daily Nation page on the presser yesterday issued by the ODM party leader, Raila Odinga, who talked about the Building Bridges initiative process, as he and the President will tomorrow be expected to preside over the signature collection process, which will be kickstarting the referendum path in 2021. Ben, to you, the ODM leader said that there's no consensus on a document. In a democracy, he said, he argued, which is factual, that you'll either have the opposing side and those who are in support of the process. But nonetheless, what many are talking about, and is more or less becoming a cliche, is uncontested, non-contested referendum. Is that, in your view, one that exists? And are we likely to witness a contested referendum in 2021?
I think let's not lie to ourselves. We have someone who does not like the BBI process, because we have to be bluntly honest about this, and someone who feels left out of the process and is trying to get relevance out of it. I think the best and the safest place for this is to say this. And this is the answer. What if the signature collection process goes through, and it will, what if the counties, okay, the IEBC passes the signatures and they will. What if the counties, they are able to get a majority of the counties as required by law, 24. And it goes? What if it goes to Parliament and it passes, and it will? What will they do? Will they still talk of consensus? Will they still talk of an uncontested referendum? It's a
done deal. You
I
have
think
yes or no?
For me, what they need to do right now is gather themselves and, you know, and I admire Raila Amolo Odinga throughout our Kenyan politics, even when we have not supported his ideals. At one point, he said, the battle for the next referendum, which was going to be 205, is going to be like the battle between David and Goliath in terms of resources, but we shall fight it anyway. And he led a successful no campaign and won against a sitting president. I think William Samoei Ruto needs to realize that a time comes when he needs to put his foot to the ground and decide. Him and his Tanga brigade should stop treating this nation to an impossibility. Because what they are giving us is an impossibility, a referendum that is not contested. Let it go through the process. Let them galvanize a strong no campaign. Let the others galvanize a strong yes campaign. And Kenyans will decide. I mean, everybody has a vote. As long as it's peaceful and democratic and everybody is given a chance to vote without intimidation and everything, let's see how it goes.
And you mentioned the 2005 outcome that subsequently led to the Kibaki dissolution of the cabinet,
Yes.
in which Raila Odinga became a casualty.
Yeah.
But do you think the Deputy President, William Ruto, can influence voters in the House of Mumbi? In this case, I'm talking about the Mount Kenya region, which is the backyard of the president. And does he have the financial muscle to withstand a no to perhaps run a no campaign against the political status of the president and the ODM party leader who have attained the zenith of political level in the country?
We don't know how much is in his accounts, really, but at least we know he's been given something to churches, which may amount to something or nothing. I think the best thing is, as if I was to borrow her words, is the best thing is let's fit the shoe, let's see if it fits.
Okay.
I mean, let us wear that shoe. So, I mean, let's get there. Let him come out. Let him persuade Kenyans. Let him go to Central of Kenya. Let us see his popularity, because the proof of pudding is eating. So you can't come and say you are popular in Uasin Gishu. You need to prove that you're popular in Uasin Gishu or you're popular in any other region in this country. So let's get there. Let's have a referendum. Let people vote yes and no.
Okay.
And boom.
Joy, the proponents yesterday said that the train is leaving the station, but many Kenyans are not aboard that train, and they need to board nonetheless, because that is the importance of the coming together of the president and the ODM party leader, Raila Odinga. So what will be the last clarion call to those who might have some reservations about the BBF for them to be aboard that train to the land of milk and honey?
Well, the land of milk and honey, I'm not very sure, because we have been told that severally, and I don't know that it exists on this side of life, most probably on the next side of life. But what I would encourage Kenyans is, when somebody said, "Ikitu ni kujipanga," if you're not there on the table to try and participate in the process, somebody else will make a decision that will still be binding on you. And so it's important for Kenyans to get involved, not for any other reason, but for the reason that whatever decisions are made on your behalf. And that's what Honorable Raila said yesterday, was, you know what, regardless, we have to have this, it's going to happen. So come and make sure that your voice is heard, whether it's a yes or a no. And I think that's the sort of call Kenyans need to heed to. Say, you know what, we've had, there's dissent on this, there's dissent on that. The bill underwent some level of panel beating, I assume, based on the feedback that had been received. So yesterday when I had Honorable Owero talking about the ladies on board, the persons with disability on board, I could tell that, okay, that is an indication that there are some of those things that had been left out that have now been reinserted. So it's important now for Kenyans to engage at that level. In refusing to engage, it doesn't mean that a decision will not be made. It will be made. And if it's made without you having your voice heard, then it means whatever the outcome, you are bound to live with it. And you cannot later say that you did not get an opportunity because it was availed and you refused to engage. So the BBI station, yes, is leaving the station largely empty.
Okay.
I'm hoping people will get aboard in the upcoming days, whether it is to support the process or not to support the process, but they will participate nonetheless, because it is our duty and it is also our responsibility as Kenyans, when we are asked a question, to speak up and let our voice be heard on what we are saying. Let it be heard clearly and unequivocally.
Okay, but even as the proponent want a better Kenya, because that's where they are driving to, and
yes,
the steer of the bus is the Prime Minister and President Uhuru Kenyatta, in this case, the driver and the co-driver. But how do they convince the disgruntled voices that appear to be radical on both ends? Because the proponents say it's either our way or the highway. The others are saying we are not going to be on board this. So therefore, how will these radical positions affect and water what the president and the ODM party leader Raila Odinga say is best for this country?
No, that's what Honorable Raila was saying yesterday. You know what, where we've reached the story of trying to bring people together, there's no point in having a non-contested referendum, because a referendum by definition is a yes or a no. And so those who feel that they cannot get behind this process, therefore come out and let your voice be heard for the no. Those who feel that they support this process and they want it to proceed as is, then they let them come out and vote yes. But either way, one thing I agree with Honorable Raila, it must come to the train station eventually. And when it does, it is important that every Kenyan's voice is heard. So it's only in Kenya's interests to actually engage in the process. Ignoring it is not going to stop it.
Okay, nonetheless, we want a better and unified country going forward and end the perpetual continuity of violence that often underpins our process after every electoral cycle. Benki Nuthia, the outcome will affect future generations. What the two gentlemen want is a prosperous Kenya post-2022, and they have been very categorical. It's not about 2022, it's not about Odinga, it's not about Kenyatta. But we have one end of the political divide, the DP William Ruto's camp, that has ever since the handshake happened been critical and voiced their concerns, and they're the vocal cheerleaders I'm talking about of DP Ruto, who see him in State House in 2022. How will they lessen the temperature here and see a Kenya that is prosperous, and perhaps for us not to pedal back to what we witnessed in 2007-8?
Okay, many things when you ask about the DP camp. First and foremost, I think the DP himself needs to take himself out for a meeting and ask himself, am I really good for Kenya? Am I the best thing for this country? I mean, my name is mentioned in almost every other scandal, whether I'm involved or not. And he needs to do that consciously and ask himself whether he's the right material that this country needs moving forward. The people who are pushing his name also need to ask themselves that, other than him being the person that we want, is he the right candidate for this nation? And those are questions that I cannot answer on their behalf. Now, having said that, I think this post-referendum, the country is going to change in very many ways. And very many opportunities will appear, and very many things will be different from the way they used to happen in the past. I think it's incumbent upon us to start looking as a generation that since this thing has come within our generation, what opportunities does it present for us? When the William Ruto came to Bomas of Kenya, he spoke from a point of misinformation and completely, totally lacked. In fact, I wished I was there, I would have told him not to say those words, because he came and said, what if we had taken government the way he had taken? And remember his words, so-and-so becomes prime minister, so-and-so. Siya wengine wote wangezama. And people didn't have an answer. But the answer was right there, hawangezama. Because now Raila Amolo Odinga would have been the leader of official opposition. And Kalonzo Musyoka would have been the deputy leader of official opposition.
He more or less was talking about the expanded executive.
Yes.
To keyword inclusivity. He was very specific that Monday speech at the Bomas of Kenya. He said, the president and I remain the constant factors. Kimunya, the majority leader, will be the prime minister. He will be deputized by Emmanuel Wangwe, and Navajola member of parliament. And the deputy majority lead, that is majority whip. That is Maoka Maure. So he said, what happens to the opposition?
Exactly.
Because we are having an expanded executive. No. More or less, what he was alluding to was the inclusivity, more or less mirage in the country, which he says is untenable.
This is the answer.
That's more or less what he was saying.
This is the answer, and that's why nobody gave him an answer. And the answer is easy. Today, the opposition went home. Raila went home, Kalonzo went home.
But they have to find,
under the proposals,
the opposition
there will be leader of official opposition as a position created by this new constitution. and there will be the deputy leader of official position. And then it's envisaged that they will have a shadow cabinet in parliament and so on and so forth. So what happens is he was asking wataenda wapi, and nobody was able to answer him that one will become the leader of official opposition, which is currently not there, and the other one will become the deputy leader of official opposition.
So there were 5 principles. I'm asking you, Ben, where will the other 3 go?
There'll be the leader of official opposition.
There will be leaders of official opposition, positions that have now been created by BBI that were not there. So they are not completely out of power. They are sitting in parliament. They are helping in what you would call oversight. Because like right now, there's a lot that has been happening, but we've not had a leader of official opposition, as it were, leading in oversight. And that's why now those 2 positions have been created alongside a shadow cabinet that they will make of their own, doesn't have to be in the constitution, which now will help to oversight parliament. And these people, as long as they are within the corridors of power, then a few other things will change. Because parliament is one of the arms of government. So having them there is basically also having them in government.
Okay, more or less it's having the opposition presenting itself as the alternative government while holding the government to account.
Yes.
And as we finish up here, Joy and Ben, here is what the cartoon edition of the Daily Nation is depicting. It's the president, the ODM party leader Raila Odinga, in the overall suit that often is used by mechanics when undertaking their work. And they seem to be pushing now the front bit of the well-chiseled wood into the no, that is the letter O, vacuum, but the other bit logically cannot fit into that. And this perhaps is an explanation of the hard times that they had experienced in the convincing of the opposition come to the Building Bridges initiative. And as we finish up, Joy, and to you, what's your interpretation here of this cartoon? The marketing problem, the popularization problem, and does it also depict what lies ahead, for the principles of the handshake?
I think it's the old English adage of trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. And what we are seeing depicted there is the President and Honorable Raila trying to make the square peg into a round peg so that it fits into the round hole. And I think there is a lot of work to be done, because if the stated objective of BBI is to bring the country together, then even if we are running a referendum, it cannot bring more divisions to the country than is necessary. You can have a yes or a no, but there cannot be such a major fallout that the stated objective is defeated. And I think that's what the President and Honorable Raila need to work towards, such that even if it's a contested election, referendum, the fallout will not be such that is so huge that you end up with what we ended up with in 2005, where you even form an entire political party, the whole political movement, contrary to the rest of the country. That's one. Then secondly, I like the fact that the President and Honorable Raila seem to be working at it, because it is a work in progress. Okay. And therefore, what we have been treated to so far are snippets of what is contained in the entire report. What we will see tomorrow now is a specific question that is going to be put to the Kenyan people. That is something that most Kenyans must interrogate deeply and keenly, because what is contained in the general report has a lot of policy, legislative, things that might be a little bit far removed from you. But on the constitutional question, you need to answer, are you in support or you're not in support? And therefore, my urging would be for every Kenyan to try and obtain a copy of that bill, the question, understand it as much as you can, and help those in your community who cannot understand it by explaining it to them as best as you can, so that by the time the referendum is called, you are doing it on an informed platform rather than out of complete ignorance. Okay,
Ben, does it highlight, or is it a reflection of what lies ahead for the President and the ODM party? The wooden bit appears to be a reflection of how it has perfectly fit, because it's well chiseled, and you have the other bit which is square-shaped and cannot fit into that hole. So what does it interpret here in terms of your understanding of this cartoon by the Daily Nation?
Interesting. Sometimes the cartoon edition of the Daily Nation is not like an accurate representation of what happens on the ground. Oftentimes there are times when they draw something that, okay, it's a cartoonist, he's drawing what his mind is telling him, and from his limited, or from his expansive tour of wherever he's been to. But I think the bulk of the country is not here. The bulk of the country is not looking at it as a small wooden chisel trying to be fit into something that is round and it's square. The country is looking at it from the point of there's a massive tsunami coming, a train, and somebody is trying to put a small wooden blockade on a rail where a train is coming laden with everything. And the actual true representation of this image is that the train that is coming is actually faster, bigger, and stronger than the small roadblock that is being put along the way with some wooden ramshackles. The train will overrun that thing and it will move. And I think what we should be asking ourselves is, as this train comes, because it's got what it's bringing, how can we as Kenyans benefit from what this train is bringing, and how can we make the best of what is coming with this new train? It was like the white men were coming into the country, and some countries, some communities were advised, don't fight this fight. So some fights you're told, this one don't fight. And in my opinion, this is his interpretation. It's the cartoonist interpretation of what he thinks will happen, but it is not accurate. The accurate situation is that actually, as we speak, the ground is largely pro-BBI. Yeah.
Okay. I just want to, Wycliffe, just press the reload button. Okay, we'll get the cartoon edition of the People Daily because Stano has equally an interesting capture. And you had earlier mentioned...
which one? The one for the bar, the woman...
It's the bar and the healthcare. We'll come to that because it's very important. And earlier you mentioned the work in progress sort of interpretation also that the cartoon does highlight in the Daily Nation. So it also means, or does it mean, that the president and the ODM leader, Raila Odinga, will be in this process post-2022 to model the political culture, the political outfit that will be born out of the BBI, and how much influence, or how will this influence perhaps shape the next political discourse post-2022?
I think the reason why we are trying to work on the BBI now is so that by 2022, we have already influenced the outcomes such that the culture will have changed by then and the outcomes will have changed by then. And so I do not foresee a situation where, and the president has been categorical in not stating that he's going to be in power still after 2022. He has been very categorical in stating that he's going to do his turn, and when he's done with his turn, he's going to move ahead. So I think we, as a society, we have to stop being fixated with people trying to look at this in the lens of beyond 2022. Let's look at it in terms of trying to influence what's going to happen before 2022. And that's why the culture now is, people are being socialized to having, for example, what Ben was talking about, a leader of official opposition, such that even if you're not going to be successful in your presidential bid, you will still have a role to play in the government, shaping, with your shadow cabinet and with your also rallying your members on the floor of the House in terms of giving direct oversight. Because there are many times, for example, Honorable Raila has weighed in on issues, and we've been asking, okay, you're weighing in, why don't you tell Mbadi to rally people in Parliament to do something about it? You're talking from the outside. Come, if the office of the leader of official opposition is instituted, then that will not be a question because he will be in Parliament and able to rally his troops from within Parliament. Okay, which according to many will also be a reflection or capturing of the voices that have voted against the government and will feel represented in this case. Now we get to the cartoon by the People Daily. Stano here is what's coming up. And this basically is the distinct dichotomy between the two ends of the divide here. You have Wanjiku wondering as to why the shelf that is ought to be containing medicine is empty, yet on the other end, the other shelf contains the different brands of alcoholic drinks. And then the part continues. You can see how these two different worlds are compared by the cartoonist here. And in the note that is atop the Wanjiku end of the divide says, notice, there is no medicine. While the other, you have a notice which says, buy one, get one free. The entertainment sector has over 30,000 pubs in Kenya. Fire all the healthcare workers and hire alcohol distributors to supply drugs in hospitals, says Wanjiku. She continues, then to eliminate alcoholism, go to the Ministry of Health, got the Ministry of Health to deliver the alcohol. While the healthcare sector has 500 hospitals in Kenya. So therefore, it's a case of the differences in the two worlds
as the cartoonist captures, and further exacerbated by the coronavirus pandemic or COVID-19 that came as an X-ray which reveals the inner deeper of the society's body, and that is the Kenyan society I'm talking about, more or less the interpretation as captured by Stano. Ben, is it the right reflection, and has he captured it, and is it the state of the nation as we speak?
It is true that we have more bars than we have hospitals.
So at least you agree with this cartoonist?
Yes, and we have more people who are thirsty than people who are sick. That is also very true. Thirsty for the drink, that is. But if you ask me, Corona, unfortunately, I must say, came as a very big blessing to this country. There are horrible things that COVID has done to us, but it is also a very big blessing to our health sector. Because for the first time, I saw the president insisting that every county must have at least 300 beds. Because there were counties that had less than 10, a whole county. Hospital beds, the beds were fewer than the number of MCAs. And that was unfortunate. So COVID, in as much as it's a painful experience, has become a very huge blessing for this country. Because it has first, at the early stages when COVID came actually, it was also a beautiful thing in as much as it was ugly. Beautiful in the sense that our MPs and our leaders, and they realized that there was not going to be a hospital outside the borders of this country that was going to treat them. They were going to be treated here. Unfortunately, that did not last long because Kenyans are so innovative. We saw in the papers that most of those leaders had started creating ICU beds in their own homes. You build a complete ICU facility right outside your compound, inside your compound, and then you forget the health facilities. And yours is equipped with drugs, the others are not. Unfortunately, we lost a member of parliament to COVID, and what did they say? We need helicopters so that they can airlift the waheshimiwas every time they cry out for help because they have COVID. Okay. But if a senior doctor dies from COVID, we do not need helicopters for that. So I think COVID has been a blessing to a very great extent, because it has helped us to see our healthcare sector from another angle. And I wish and I keep praying that there was a legislation that prohibited every person who is holding public office in this country from ever seeking medical treatment outside this country. Because that's the day our hospitals will become hospitals. Okay. And any person who is holding public office from ever having their children educated in a private institution, because that's the day you'll see them being painted overnight and being equipped with books and material. So we need to get to the point where we mean well for this nation and we behave well for this nation. And this is a clear reflection of what's happening on the ground. This guy is right, that private hospitals are full of drugs. Public hospitals are the ones that do not have. Okay. Then the pubs are full of alcohol. Buy one, get three free. Okay. But the bulk of the Mwananchi has a problem.
Joy, has Stano literally spoken to the real state of affairs? And is it a case of also a cultural problem that Kenyans have when it comes to having an appetite and pressurizing the president to open up bars rather than the amplified calls that we ought to have heard of demanding better healthcare systems that are functional, that are equipped, and where Kenyans can access affordable healthcare?
Before I even go to your question, if you look at that, what Stano is trying to bring out is that beer distributors are doing a better job of getting drinks to over 30,000 pubs across the country. And yet, KEMSA cannot deliver to at least 500 hospitals. Cannot distribute medication to 500 hospitals. So that tells you that there's a level of inefficiency that he's actually pointing to and saying, you know what, how is it possible that drinks get to every part of Kenya? Forget even about alcoholic drinks. Think even about Coca-Cola. Is there a place in this country you'll go to a kiosk and ask for Coca-Cola and they don't have one? They managed to deliver it to the farthest corners of this country. But for some reason, we cannot get drugs delivered to our hospitals. That's one. Then secondly, there's also the issue of oversupply. If you come to a place where things like alcoholic beverages are in such good supply that you can afford to have an offer of buy one, get three free, it means that the drinks are flowing. There's no shortage of the same. But if you look at the contrary side, is even that one that you're supposed to pay for is not there. Even if you're willing to pay for it, it is not there. So we have, it looks like a hilarious cartoon, but it raises very fundamental issues on supply, on the efficiency of distribution when it is there. We are now talking about a situation where it's in today's dailies somewhere about health workers who are recycling PPEs because they don't have enough. In recycling PPEs, they're exposing the next patients that they deal with whatever they encountered from where they came. And yet we're told in KEMSA, forget about how overpriced they are, but it's full to the rafters with PPEs lying there that they're still waiting to find out how are they going to get rid of. So that question of the efficiencies of our systems need to be answered. But back to your question, it is true, our software is fundamentally flawed because as Kenyans, there are certain things that we count to be almost sacrosanct, such as our freedom to relate with our pals over the weekend.
Yep.
And you are right. When the president even made his speech, he even actually did not just say that, okay, the curfew is lifted. It was like, you can go back and drink. It was one of those things of, you know what, I have had it, you just have your way. Mtoto akililia wembe, mpe. And so we were given our wembe. So, but you see the pan now becoming, if you want alcoholism to end, have KEMSA deliver the drinks around the country. All the bars will be dry. So people will have nothing to drink. But there's some people who have learned how to make their own brew.
Okay.
So that might not solve the problem entirely.
It's a good way to end the broadcast. Thank you so much, Joy Mdevo, lawyer, commentator, social political development. She equally serves as the executive director of the East Africa Center for Law and Justice. Thank you, Joy.
Thank you.
Your time is appreciated. Thank you, Ben, wakili, lawyer and commentator on social political development. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And asanteni sana. We'll meet another day by the grace of God.
Yes.
And we'll see you tomorrow at the same time. Bye-bye.